Hello and welcome to another crochet pattern tutorial. As you can see, we are going to be making this lovely Asclepius beanie. This is going to be a nice hat for those cold weather months. You can see we've also got a nice little cable detail going down the side here. And then we've also got this nice stretchy ribbing that will hold it to our head when we wear it. So to do this beanie, what we're going to do is need a few supplies. So to start with, the yarn that I used is this local hand-dyed yarn. It's from Yarn Dragon Fibers, and this is made locally, but you can also purchase it online. This is a DK weight. This is her Squishy DK in the color Who Are You from her Alice in Wonderland collection. The color I made my original beanie in is called, to put it bluntly, a weed. You can use any DK weight, merino wool, or any fiber that you would like to, as long as you match gauge to get the size that you're wanting. For most of the sizes, you are going to need about 2 skeins of this type of yarn, because crochet, and cabled crochet especially, does eat up a lot of yarn. But for some of the smaller sizes, you can get away with just a single skein to make one whole hat. The other thing you'll need are some crochet hooks. So I have 2 crochet hooks here. One you'll need is the smaller hook. I used a 5mm US size H hook. This is my Furls Streamline in Silver Oak. That is used to make the ribbing, so that gives you that tighter ribbing so that it fits snugly around the head. And then for the main body and cabling, I used a size I. This is a 5.5mm hook, and this is my Streamline in Ebony. The other thing you'll need are a few notions. So one thing is that you'll want to get a tape measurer of some kind, so you can measure in inches or in centimeters. I put it both in the pattern, and you'll use this to measure the widest part of the wearer's head. And then, because you want to make sure it fits snugly, I designed this hat with 2 inches or 5 centimeters of negative ease, so that it's tighter around the head than the actual head, so that it actually stays on. So once you measure your head, or whoever you're making this for's head, you're going to subtract 2 inches, and that will help you figure out which size that you need to make. The other thing you'll need is a stitch marker. I just used this plain beaded one that you can use. You'll really only need one, because you'll just need to mark the beginning of the round so that we can work our rounds continuously. We will not be joining and turning. You'll also need a pair of scissors for cutting. And then you'll also need a tapestry needle of some kind. I just have these plain bent tip yarn needles, and then you can use that to just weave in ends where we need to join our yarn. The difficulty level for this pattern, I would say, is an intermediate level to perhaps maybe like beginning the advanced stages, just because of some of the techniques we will be using here. But overall, I think if you are confident with regular crochet stitches, and if you've worked any kind of post stitches before, then you should be able to do this hat. So with that all set up, we are now ready to begin starting our Asclepius beanie. To begin the Asclepius beanie, we're going to start with this ribbed bottom part. Now notice that the ribbing is something that we can fold and unfold. So I designed this with the idea that you're going to wear this with a folded brim. Now, if you do not want the folded brim, what I recommend is just doing about half the number of stitches that I will have you do in the pattern. And so that way you don't have to have it folded over. But if you do like that folded over look, definitely do the same amount that I did. Or if you even want an extra thick brim, you can even add more stitches. Now that is going to require more yarn than I recommend in the pattern, but that's up to you to customize how wide you want this brim to be. But I'm going to go ahead and show you what I have written in the pattern. So I'm going to fold that back up, and then You'll take your 5mm hook and your yarn, and then you will make a slip knot. Place that on your hook, and then you are going to chain a number depending on your size. So whatever size it says in your pattern, you'll go ahead and chain that amount. All right, and then skipping this first chain from the hook, in the next chain, we're just going to work a regular single crochet. And then we will work single crochets into each chain across. Then, once you work your final single crochet, we are going to turn, and then we will chain one, and then we will only be working in the back loop of the stitch. So if we look at the top of our stitches, we've got the two stitches forming the V. So the front loop is the one closest to us, the back loop is the one farthest away. We're going to insert our hook through the center of that V, going through the back loop, pulling up our loop, and then completing our single crochet like so. And then we work into the back loop of the next one, making a single crochet. And what that does is that gives us the stretchy, ribbed look for the brim of our beanie. And we will just do that all the way across, working single crochets in the back loop only. Then once you reach that final stitch worked in the back loop only, we're going to turn, chain one, and then just repeat exactly what we did on row 2, working single crochets into the back loop only. And that's all you're going to be doing for multiple rows until you reach the row count for your size stated in your pattern. Now this is going to take a while to do because think about how wide around the head that this needs to go. You're going to have a lot of rows worked up. Now, as you're working these rows, an easy way to count them is by identifying where our tail end is. And we can see here that we're starting row 3. So that means that if we look on the side that we're on now, row 2 is going to be indicated by this ridge that we've got going right here. As we're working row 3, going back towards the tail, row 2 is this ridge. So row 3 is going to be the next groove, and then row 4 will go back this way, forming the next ridge, and then row 5 is the next groove, row 6 is the next ridge. So if you turn towards your where your tail is on the top, each ridge is going to count as 2 rows. So you could count them as 2, 4, 6, 8, etc., etc. Now, because this is going to take me a while and it's going to take you a while, I'm going to work the remainder of my ribbing off camera, and then I will meet you back up to talk to you about joining. I've now finished working up all of the ribbing for my size of beanie, and so now it's time for us to be able to do the join. So to do the join, what we're going to do is chain one, and then we're going to fold the ribbing to where we will overlap the last row that we just worked directly on top of the first row that we worked earlier, so that it will nest like this and basically look like just a continuation of that ribbing pattern going in the same direction. So to do that, when you layer them on top, we are going to go through the loops. So the stitch of the very first, the very first stitch of the last row. So we'll insert our hook and we will go under both loops. And then we'll find this first row here and just kind of like eyeball where like that first stitch is, because it was worked in a chain. So we'll just kind of insert where we feel like the first stitch really is. So as long as you get relatively lined up, this should be just fine. So then once you get through both of those stitches, you're then going to yarn over and then just slip stitch those two together like so. Then we'll just do that into the next one. So then we'll find the next stitch, so which would be this one right here. Insert our hook through both of those, and then find the second stitch down here, and then insert through that, going through the front. And then we will yarn over and slip stitch those two together. And then you just repeat that with all of the stitches along the final row here. So we've got 3, and then we have 4, now I'm about halfway across, and at this point I want to show you something. So like the yarn that we're going to be pulling from is going farther and farther to the back, and it's a lot harder to see at this point. So what you can do is you just kind of hold it and feel around for it. But if you need to, when you insert through the first stitch, and then you insert through the last stitch here, or sorry, the last row and then the first row, you can always just kind of turn your work and then find where your yarn is so that you can grab it. And then you just pull, like when you pull through any stitch, just kind of feel around to make sure you're getting through everything. And notice if you need to, you can just pull through one at a time. So I pulled through this first, then I pulled through here, and then I'll pull through finally through that loop. And so by doing that, you can take it just a couple of steps at a time instead of trying to do it in one big motion. Because after a while, this obviously maybe gets a little difficult to work if you're like, I can't even see where the yarn is, so I can't know to grab it. You can feel free, just turn it, make it work for you. All right, so I'm going to continue working the rest of these. I've got about 8 more, I think. Okay, I've got 2 more left. And it looks like I have about 2 more stitches here. So that's good. If I find that I'm out of stitches or there's maybe a couple extra, just kind of fudge it here towards the end. It'll all still look good as long as it's closely lined up. So then I'll work through my last one here. And then I don't want to go through just that one. So we'll go maybe through right here. Make sure it's secure there. Okay. And there we go. And then once you do that, you'll notice that the ribbing here basically looks very similar to the ribbing that's all around it and doesn't really give that obvious join. Even when I flip it to the other side here, there is a little bit of this kind of groove here, but that's not going to be as noticeable when people are just looking at the hat. Now, the other thing though, to decide at this point is I designed this to where the cuff or the brim is supposed to be able to flip up. So I'd like to decide, which side do I really want to be more visible? Even though both sides are pretty good, there might be one that you might prefer. And so you might decide, okay, I want that to be visible most of the time. So for me, I want this ridge to be my most visible one. So what I actually want is for my brim to flip going this way. And so as a result, I want to make sure that I turn my hat. I'm going to turn this brim inside out and then adjust my yarn ball through here. Oop, got caught. There we go. Okay, adjust my yarn ball out here. There we go. And then that way, as I'm working the rounds of the hat, when a person wears this, they're going to naturally flip it outward to flip it up. And now that ridge is the one that's going to be more visible because I like the way that this blends in a bit better than this side does. So that's, again, just personal preference. If you don't really care either way, you don't have to flip it inside out or anything. You could just continue working from this side or this side. It doesn't really matter. So now that we're done with our ribbing, What we're going to do now is get set up to be able to work the body of our beanie. To work the body of our beanie, because we are done using the 5mm hook, because we're done with the ribbing, we can actually go ahead and set that aside and go ahead and grab our 5.5mm hook, which will be used for the remainder of our beanie. So what we're going to do is we're going to chain one, and then we are going to work into our very first stitch here. So you should have the number of rows is going to be the number of stitches that we will be working. So to start with, we're going to do a round of just loose slip stitches, just to give this a nice little transition. So it's a little bit cleaner when we get ready to start the actual stitching for the body. So to do that, we're going to work into this very first side of our ribbing, and we're going to insert our hook. And just very relaxed, we're going to make a slip stitch, just like that. And then we're going to take our stitch marker, and then we're going to mark that very first slip stitch to indicate that that's the first stitch of this round. Since we won't be doing any joining or turning or anything like that, we want to make sure we mark that because it can be easy to lose once we get into the actual pattern. Once I do that, I'm then going to go into the side of this next row. So we'll notice that this one, when I worked into it, this was the row we just finished, which was a ridge on this side. So then it was a groove over here. So then we're going to work into the ridge of this next one. So the ridge I'm going to work into is going to be, let's just say right about here. It's not exact. Like you can decide how you want to put it in as long as you find a rhythm that works for you. So I'll insert my hook and then go ahead and slip stitch into that one. So there's my second one. And then now I want to work into a groove here. So that was a groove. So I want to work into, I want to work into a groove. So I'll work right about here. There's my third one. And I want to work into this ridge. So then I'll go there. That's my fourth one. And then I want to work into this groove. So go here and slip stitch. And then into this ridge. And then into this groove. And then into this ridge. So basically you're just alternating working slip stitches into the grooves and ridges of your ribbing. And that should get you the correct stitch count. Now, if you find by the end that you're off by maybe like a couple of stitches, it's okay. Don't worry about it. Just insert the number of stitches that you need for your size by either placing an extra slip stitch in some place or skipping a place or something like that. Just it'll work in the end if you make a couple of little adjustments along the way. But if you stick with basically the groove ridge alternating between groove and ridge slip stitches, then you should get really close to the stitch count, if not exact. So I'm going to go ahead and work those up, and then I will meet you back to show you what to do to begin round one of our beanie. All right, and I've got exactly the right number of stitches that I need now that I've reached the end here. And now I'm ready to begin round one. So round one is just a round of single crochets, but we're going to be working these single crochets into the back loops of all of our slip stitches. And then that will leave a free loop here to create that nice little transition line that will give it a nice, clean, smooth look. So what I'm going to do is take my beginning of round stitch marker out, and then finding, oh, I don't want to tighten too much on this last one. I started to do that there, and pull that up again. So there's my last stitch again, nice and relaxed. And then into this very first slip stitch, going through just that back loop here, I'm going to insert our hook, pull up our loop, and then complete our first single crochet. And then go ahead and place our stitch marker back into this stitch as the beginning of round marker. And then we'll just do that into every stitch around. So we'll find the next slip stitch, go through just the back loop of that slip stitch, and finish our single crochet. And then just keep repeating that until we get back to the beginning. So I'll go ahead and work that up and then meet you back. And I'm coming now to my last stitch. There we go. As you can see, it does create this nice clean line that transitions from our ribbing to the body of our hat. So now what we're going to do is start working single crochets into our first stitch and around again. But this time we're just going to be going through both loops because we're no longer needing to create any ridges. We're not working any more ribbing. So from now on, all of our single crochets are just worked like normal. So there's my first single crochet of the round. And then into the next stitch, I will insert under both loops, work my single crochet. And then for round 2 here, we're just going to do this over and over. We're just working single crochets into each stitch all the way around. So I will go ahead and do that and then meet you back up to begin round 3 where we start introducing the cable work. Before we begin round 3, I want to stop and take a moment to talk about this cable design to give us an idea of where we're going and why we're working it the way that we are. So this cable is going to be worked in 16 row repeats. Obviously being a hat, you're not going to do too many of those. So just you'll at least get through one, and then depending on your size, you might get through one whole other one or half of one or something like that. But it's always worked in the following way. So when we establish it here, you start with this kind of central column that's going to run completely up. So that's supposed to be like the rod of Asclepius. So that's going to be the rod that's going up and down. And then this cable part is going to be wrapping around like the snake that you see that's wrapped around the rod. And so it's going to move around back and forth. So these post stitches that we will work are always going to be worked in this same spot, and they're just worked straight up and down. These post stitches are going to be the ones that we will shift with each row. So we're going to start with having a little bit of a space between them. Then on the next one, we move it closer, so where there's no space. Then on the next one, we actually will go across this set of center post stitches. And here, I'm going to show you the techniques for how to work behind these versus in front and how we get that look. And then we're going to move back outward to give us a little bit more space. And then we'll move up and then move back in and then cross again and then space out. So basically it starts spaced away, moves closer, crosses, moves away, goes up, goes closer, crosses, moves away, goes up, goes closer, crosses. So that's essentially what we're doing to get this nice little curved cable around here. So now that you know that, let's go ahead and get started on round 3 to start establishing this pattern. I've just completed round 2 and I'm now ready to begin round 3. So I'm going to go ahead and remove my stitch marker. So you can think of round 3 when we begin it, we're going to be working 2 sections essentially, and then just repeating those 2 sections. We're going to have just like a section of where we're going to be doing our shaping, which is going to be regular single crochets. And then we'll follow it up with the section of our cable. Now for this first section, you always start with 1 single crochet. We'll pop our stitch marker right back into there. And then we always frame it with a front post double crochet. And where we are going to work our front post double crochets in this third round is around the single crochets that form that very first round that we worked earlier. And we're going to drop down directly below. So if we find our next stitches right here, if we just kind of look down below, we can see that the post of our single crochet hits right about here. If we can kind of stretch that out there, and you can just kind of eyeball where it's going to land nice and straight up and down. So to do a front post double crochet, we're going to yarn over like we do for a normal double crochet. And then instead of going into the stitch, we're going to go around it, first going to the right of the stitch, then around the post, and then to the left of that stitch. And if you'll notice, you can see that it's coming out of this back loop here because there's the bottom loop of that slip stitch row that we did in the beginning. So I've got it around the correct spot here. And then I'm going to yarn over and pull around that post. And now I've got a regular double crochet setup. So then I just yarn over, pull through two, yarn over, pull through two. And I've got my very first front post double crochet. Now because I've worked here and I don't want the stitch count to change, anytime I work a post stitch, I want to make sure that I do not duplicate a stitch into the stitch right behind it. So this single crochet of our current row needs to be skipped since we've already worked this stitch in front of it. So I will skip this first single crochet. Then in the next one, I will work a regular single crochet. And then depending on your size, you will work a certain number of single crochets across this section. So I'll go ahead and work those up. Then once you work up those single crochets for your size, you'll then work another framing front post double crochet. So once again, we'll find our next stitch here, and then we will kind of stretch this out, and we can look kind of directly below it here. We've got this post that's right here. So I'm going to go around the post of this stitch. So I will yarn over, go around the post of that single crochet, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through two, yarn over, pull through two, and I've completed my next double crochet. And then, just like before, I want to make sure I skip the single crochet that's right behind it. And then my next single crochet will be worked right here. And that is going to be the repeat for this section all the way around every single time. You're going to work a single crochet, front post double crochet, however many single crochets for your size, front post double crochet, single crochet. And that gives us this nice little clean framed area right here. Then the next part is going to be worked across the next 8 stitches. So this is going to be an 8-stitch cable, and it's the same for every size. So every size is worked across 8 stitches here. So for our very first cable row, we're actually going to be working 3 single crochets. So I will work 3 single crochets. Now remember, that first single crochet that's in front of it is not part of the cable. It's part of the section that we do over here. So we don't count that as part of the cable. So we're going to ignore that and then make sure we have these 3 single crochets. So there we go. Once we do, we will then work 2 front post double crochets across the next 2 stitches here. So find my next stitch, stretch that out here, and look for the post of the single crochet directly below it here. So it's going to be this one down here. And work a front post double crochet. And then we're going to work another front post double crochet around the next one. So I don't even really have to like look for the next stitch up here. I can just find the post that's next to this one that I just worked around. So right next to that one is going to be this one. So I will work my next front post double crochet around the next post stitch, or the next single crochet's post. There we go. And I've got my front post double crochet. Now, if you find that as you're working these, it's slanting or kind of like, moving a little more to the right or the left, and you don't really quite like the look, you can just undo it and then work your stitch around a different post because maybe you picked one that wasn't quite lined up, or you had it turned a certain way or whatever. But also, it's not necessarily going to be perfectly straight. Unfortunately, just the nature of crochet, stitches don't line up perfectly. They're always going to be kind of on this slant. So we're eventually going to deal with that by blocking. So don't worry too much about it if you find that you're not perfectly straight up and down. But in either case, I've worked my 2 front post double crochets here. And because I worked 2 of them, I want to make sure I skip 2 single crochets behind them. So this one and this one. Then I'm going to work 1 single crochet into this next one right here. And that creates our nice little space between this center. This is going to be the center of our cable. And then we're going to work the start of the snake part of the cable. So the next thing we're going to do is work 2 more front post double crochets. So we'll yarn over and then find this next stitch. Find the one that's directly below it here. It looks like, did I skip? Yeah, I did. Okay. It looks like I would probably have worked it around this one, but since it's right next to this one, I don't really want that. So I'm actually going to go ahead and work it into the one over here to make sure it's getting that extra space. There we go. And then I'll work the next one around the next one. And there we go. I've got 2 front post double crochets. And then if I count, I've got, remember this one doesn't count. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I now have all of the stitches for my cable. So now I'm ready to repeat everything that I just did. So we're going to do that 3 more times. So that will create 4 of each of these different sections. So now I will work skipping these 2 stitches. I'm going to work a single crochet, followed by a front post double crochet, skipping that stitch behind it, going to the next one, and then work however many single crochets it says to work for my size. And then follow that up with another front post double crochet, skip the one behind it, and then a single crochet. And I'm done with that repeat. And then I'm ready to begin working the next repeat of this cable section. So now that I've shown you how to do that, you should be able to go back and rewind to watch this again if you need to. But that's pretty much all you're going to do for the finishing of round 3 and establishing this cable row. So I'll go ahead and finish that up and meet you back for round 4. As I finish up this round, you're going to notice that we'll be ending with a cable. And so the very last 2 stitches of the cable are these front post double crochets that we will work. And then we will be ready to start round 4. Now, a mistake that might happen is because people might forget at the end here that we're supposed to make sure we skip stitches behind the front post double crochets that we create. They might accidentally work into these last 2 single crochets before the beginning of round stitch marker. Make sure you don't do that because those count based on these front post double crochets we did. So these are the last stitches of our round. So now the next stitch we would work begins round 4 in this beginning of round stitch marker. Now, round 4 and all the even numbered rounds until we get to the crown where we start doing our decreases are going to be worked this exact same way. It's just a round of single crochets to give us a little bit of space and height so that we have room to put our front post stitches later. So we're going to go ahead and work a single crochet into that very first stitch. Make sure we mark it with our stitch marker. And then every stitch around, we just work single crochet. And that's going to be what's really nice about rounds 4, 6, 8, 10, etc. is that this is all you do. You just single crochet in every stitch around. So it kind of gives you a little bit of a break from having to concentrate on all of your cable work. So I'm going to let you go ahead and work that up. And I will work mine up as well. And then I will meet you back to talk about round 5. I've now finished working my single crochets around for round 4, and I'm ready to begin round 5. So round 5 is where we will just continue our cable work here. So I'll go ahead and remove. And so this next section is just the nice easy one where we just do a single crochet as our first stitch. And then we will work a front post double crochet. Now that we've had them established, what's great is that every post stitch from now on moving forward is going to be worked around the post stitch that's directly below, or if it's not directly below, at least it's just the next unworked one. So we're going to find our next unworked post stitch here, and that's where we will work our front post double crochet, is always around that unworked post stitch, just to continue that nice little column of post stitches here. So we'll go ahead and work our front post double, skip the single that's behind it, work the number of singles for our size. And then we'll be back at the next post stitch. So we'll work a front post double crochet, skipping the one behind that, and then working the last single crochet of this section. Then we're ready to begin the next row of our cable. So across these next 8 stitches of our cable, we are going to work 3 single crochets again. So remember, this one we just made is part of this first section, so we don't count that. So we will work 3 single crochets. And then we're going to work 4 front post double crochets around these next 4 post stitches. Remember earlier that these 2 sets of post stitches had a space between them. So what we're doing now at this point is closing that space by putting post stitches here to keep it going up and down. But then that's going to shift these post stitches over to the right by 1 stitch. So that way we kind of get that cable to start leaning towards the right to get closer to that center set of post stitches. So we'll do our front post double crochet around this first one, another one around the second post stitch here. Then skipping these stitches here, we're going to go directly to this next post stitch, work our next front post double crochet, and then work our final front post double crochet around this last one here. And we will now have our 4 front post double crochets all worked together. Now, because we worked 4 of them, what we're going to do is we're going to skip the 4 single crochets that are behind those. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we need to work 1 more single crochet right here in this next stitch. So in that next stitch, I'm going to work 1 single crochet. And that helps keep our stitch count at those 8 stitches. So it fills in the space where these stitches used to fill in. It's now shifted these over. So these have moved to the right, and now we've got a single crochet on the left side instead of the right side of these post stitches. Then I'm ready to repeat. So I should be back here to my next section. So I would do a single crochet, front post double crochet, skip the stitch behind it, single crochet, and then just keep working single crochets, post stitch, single crochet, and then right back to my cable. So now that you know what to do, you should be able to finish out round 5 and then also round 6, because that's the same as round 4 where we just worked those single crochets. So actually I'm going to work these up and then meet you back up to begin round 7. I've now finished up round 6 and I'm ready to start round 7. So round 7 is going to start the same way as rounds 3 and 5, where we will work a single crochet into our very first stitch, followed by our front post double crochet, skipping that stitch, working single crochets to the next post stitch, and then we'll work our front post double crochet, skip one, and then work our single crochet. Now for the next part of our cable, what we're going to be doing is doing our first cross. So we're going to be moving these front post double crochets here. We're going to connect them using front post treble crochets, then cross them here, and then work this column of front post double crochets here. So to do that, these stitches are going to actually shift from being in these two positions across to these two. So we actually only need to work one single crochet to start with on this part of the cable. Then, skipping all of these stitches, we're going to go all the way to these last two front post double crochets and work 2 front post treble crochets. So to do that, we're going to yarn over twice, go across all the way to these last two, insert our hook around the post, yarn over, pull up a loop. We'll now have these 4 loops on our hook. We will then yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. And it might start to kind of scrunch things up a bit, but if you make that nice and relaxed, it should be able to go all the way across without a lot of puckering going on right here. So then we will just do that again around the next one. Yarn over twice, go around the post of this last front post double crochet of the cable, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. Then we have to work the front post double crochets that will continue this center column. Now what's great about how this pattern works is that the cables, you're always going to be working in front of the ones that are crossing. So we don't have to worry about trying to, like maneuver our hook back behind any stitches to grab anything. No, we just go ahead and work our next stitches by working a front post double crochet directly into this first one that we skipped. So we will yarn over, go around that stitch, working in front of all the stitches that we just made right here. Pull up our loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. Then we just do that again into this next one that we skipped earlier. Yarn over, go around the post of that second stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. And by doing that, what we've done is we've taken these post stitches that were over here, we've connected them to where it looks like they cross behind these center post stitches right here. And so that's going to give us that nice little cross look of this cable going back behind this one. Then because we worked 4 post stitches, we want to make sure that we skip the next 4 stitches behind them. So if I kind of pull these forward here, I'll find that this was the first one that we would skip. That's the second one, third one, fourth one. So the next one we need to work into is right here. So we'll notice that that one is kind of right here where this set of post stitches would have been in front of, only now that we've leaned them this way, we actually can see those stitches there. We'll place that single crochet to replace where these stitches were in the first place. If you don't understand what that meant, just ignore all of that and just basically know, skip 4 stitches, work your next single crochet here, and then you'll work 2 more single crochets to get our total of 8 stitches across our cable. So we had our 1 here, the 2 treble crochets, the 2 front post double crochets, and then the 3 single crochets, all total up to 8. And that's how we work the cable for round 7. And now we're back to the next section where we just start repeating all of that. So we'll do a single, front post double, all these singles, then do our cable and all that stuff. So I'll go ahead and finish up rounds 7 and 8, and then I will meet you back up to talk about round 9. I went ahead and started the beginning of round 9 because this part has been the same and will continue to be the same for all of these rounds. So I'm just finishing up the end of that section. So I've got my front post double crochet, and then I'll skip and then work my next single crochet. So I'm done with that first section. And now I'm ready to begin the cable, which is the part that you'll probably need the more help with anyway. So for this part, what we're going to be doing is taking these treble crochets that were the crossing ones, and we're going to be connecting them and moving them over to the right by 1 stitch, because we're going to now have them on the other side, where instead of being here on the left with the chain with a single crochet in the middle, it's going to be on the right with a single crochet in between. So to do that, we're actually not going to make any more single crochets in this part. We're just going to go straight into working front post stitches. So we're going to kind of pull our treble crochets out from behind these 2 front post double crochets, so we can clearly see the posts right here, because we're going to be working around those posts. So we'll start with a front post double crochet. So we will yarn over, go around the post of that first treble crochet, pull up our loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. And then we'll do the same thing around the next one. So it might try to tuck back in again. So make sure you take this one that we've already worked around and kind of pull it out of the way. Stretch everything here and find that treble crochet right there. And that's going to be where we work our next front post double crochet. So we will yarn over, go around that treble crochet, pull up our loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. And now you can see here, it looks like we've got this cable running behind the front cables here, and then scooching over here to the right on the other side. And that's exactly what we want it to look like. Now, because we worked 2 of these, we're going to skip the next 2 single crochets here. And so then we will work a single crochet into the next one to create that little space. Then we'll be ready to do these 2 front post double crochets here in the middle again. So yarn over, go around, pull the loop, pull through 2, pull through 2, yarn over, go around, pull up a loop, pull through 2, pull through 2. And then we will skip 2 stitches behind those 2, and then we will work 3 single crochets to finish out this cable. 1, 2, 3. And we will now be back to working our single, front post, singles, all that stuff for the repeats. So that's all there is to this cable. Is after we're done with this part, we start with some front post double crochets, single crochets, so that's 3 stitches, these 2 front post double crochets, which make 5, and then these 3 add up to make 8. So that's our full cable for round 9. So go ahead and work the rest up of round 9 and 10, and then I will meet you back up to talk about round 11. All right, I'm finishing up the first part of round 11 and now ready to show you the cable. So what's great about this is that the cable on round 11 is just going to be a repeat of the same cable we did on round 9. And so we're just going to start by working front post double crochets around these 2 front post double crochets from before. Then we will skip these 2 stitches behind there, work a single crochet into the next one, and then we will work front post double crochets around the next 2. And then skipping those 2 back here, we're going to work 3 single crochets. And then once we do that, we're done with the cable section, and we are now ready to finish working out the repeats for the remainder of the round. So I'm going to go ahead and work up the rest of round 11 and round 12, and then I will meet you up for round 13. I just now started my next round, so we're on round 13, and so now we're going to see how to do the cable for this one. So what this part of the cable is going to do is essentially how this one down here began, but just going in the opposite direction. So we're going to start by doing a single crochet in the first stitch of the cable. Then to move this over, we're going to work 2 front post double crochets because now we've done a single crochet here. It's going to shift it over to here. And then there's no longer going to be a space in between. And then we'll jump into working the front post double crochets here. So essentially, we're just going to work 4 front post double crochets across. So front post double crochet around the first one, second one, third one, and fourth one. And that's now taken our cable and moved it back over slightly to the left because now we're going to be getting ready to start crossing in the opposite direction again. So now we've done 4 front post double crochets. So we will skip the next 4 stitches that are behind those. And then we will work 3 single crochets to finish out the cable section. And now we're back to doing the repeat like we were doing before. So I'll go ahead and finish this up, finish up round 14, and then I will meet you back for round 15. For round 15, we're going to work the cable by doing the crossing going in the opposite direction to then set up to where we will start repeating all of the instructions that we did down here. So to do that, what we're going to actually do is work 3 single crochets because we're no longer going to have post stitches on the right side. They're going to be crossing over. So we'll do those 3 single crochets. Then we're going to skip these 2 post stitches because these are going to be worked using the treble crochets that will cross, but we're not going to do those yet. We're actually going to start by working these front post double crochets. So skipping these 2 and working around these next 2, we're just going to do 2 front post double crochets like normal. And then for the next 2 stitches, we're actually going to be connecting all the way back over here to these. So we're going to do 2 front post treble crochets around these 2 skipped stitches. So to do that again, we're going to yarn over twice, go all the way back here, working in front of all the stitches we just made. We're going to go around the post of that first skipped post stitch. Yarn over, pull up our loop. Get a little bit squished together, but we should still have those 4 strands of yarn there. We're going to yarn over, pull through just the first 2, then yarn over, pull through the next 2, and then yarn over and pull through the last 2. And that's our first front post treble crochet completed. Then we're going to do that again around the next one. So we'll kind of spread this back out, make sure we're seeing very clearly where our post stitches are. So we just worked around this one. So now we need to work the next front post treble around the second one. So we'll yarn over twice, find that second double crochet, go around it, and then finish off our front post treble crochet. Now we can see that our cable has moved from the right going underneath this center column of stitches, then up, and then it's moved back to the left and it's crossed over this center column of stitches. So that's exactly what it's supposed to look like, is it looks like it's wrapping around the back, then spiraling around the front, and then it'll do that again with the next repeat is going to the back, and then across the front, across the back, across the front. Okay, so now that we've done that, we've got our 4 post stitches that we've just made. So we're going to skip the next 4 stitches behind there. So we've got this one we worked. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And that means we now only need 1 more stitch. So we're going to do 1 single crochet into the next stitch. And that completes the 8 stitches of this part of our cable. And now we're back to working our single, front post double, and all these singles for our repeat. So now we can do everything we need to for round 15 and round 16. And then I'll meet you back up for round 17 to show you how we then begin the repeat working into these post stitches. I've now made it back to the cable where we're going to start doing repeats of everything that we just did here. So this is just going to be a repeat of what we did in round 3. So we're back to cable row 1. But I know that sometimes it can be a bit difficult working this one as compared to this one when we worked it originally around single crochets. So I am going to go ahead and show that on here. So the first thing we do is work 3 single crochets. And then it says that we will work 2 front post double crochets. So where we're going to work those is around the center set of double crochets here that are going to be tucked behind these ones that are going diagonally across. So what we're going to do is kind of stretch and push those to the side here. And we kind of push these out. We can see those 2 front post double crochets tucked in back here. So that's where we're going to be working our next 2 front post stitches. So we'll go ahead and do our yarn over, go around this very first one, dig that kind of out there, and then pull up our loop, complete our front post double crochet. Then we'll do that again into the around the next one. So we will yarn over, go around, kind of maybe digging that out here, like so. Then we will pull up a loop, pull through 2, pull through 2. Then what we're going to do is we need to work a single crochet into the next stitch. So we'll need to find the 2 that we need to skip back here. So there's 1, 2. We'll work a single crochet into this next one. And then we will work the final part of the cable by doing 2 more front post double crochets, this time around these treble crochets that are in the front. So all we do for that is yarn over, go around the post of this first treble crochet right here, and then work our front post double here. And there we go. And then repeat that around the next front post treble. So yarn over, go around the post of our treble crochet, pull up a loop, complete our front post double crochet. And now we should be done with the actual cable stitches, and we will now be back to the actual repeat here. So if we skip these next 2 stitches, we'll find that the next stitch to work into is the first single crochet of that set of single crochets and front post framing double crochets that we start the very beginning of the round with. So now we're back to just basically doing a regular repeat. So now that you've seen all of those, you should have all the tools that you need to continue working up the remainder of your hat body. So if you'll follow along with your size for your pattern, it'll tell you how many repeats of this cable, these cable rounds we're going to do. Once you work those, you'll then be ready to work the crown, where we will start to decrease for the top of the head. So I'm going to work up the remainder of the body of my size, and then I will meet you back to talk to you about decreasing for the crown. I've just finished working up the body of my hat, and I'm now ready to begin the crown. And the crown is going to be where we start to decrease for the top of the hat. So one thing to note is that all the patterns at this point are going to, or sorry, all the sizes at this point are going to follow their own decrease pattern because of the difference in the width of this section here between these front post double crochets. And so the decrease is going to be happening here, not in this cable section for now. And so all of them are going to basically be decreasing just however many are in here. Once they do, they're ready to move to the last part, which is the second part of the crown. So pay attention to which instructions are for your size, because once it reaches the point of where there's no more room to decrease here, you'll be ready to move to the next section. Okay, so to do that, one of the things we'll do is go ahead and take out our stitch marker here, and we work a single crochet into this first one. And then go ahead and place our stitch marker back here. And then we work our front post double crochet into this next one. And then we'll still skip the one that's behind it. But then what we would normally do is just work a single crochet into this one, but we'll actually go ahead and work a single crochet decrease across these next two by doing 2 single crochets together. So in this one, to do that, we are going to insert our hook into this first single crochet to work into, yarn over and pull up a loop. Then we're going to, before we finish this, put our hook into the next stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop, and we will now have 3 loops on our hook across these 2 stitches, and that's when we will yarn over and finish the stitch. And it now goes from being 2 stitches down to 1 stitch. So that's how we do our decrease right here. So the decrease happens on this side of this front post double crochet. Then, depending on your size, I know that I believe extra small is pretty much done. There's nothing left for them to decrease after this, so they'll go straight over to here. But all the other sizes, there's going to be some stitches still through here. So you're going to go ahead and single crochet the number of stitches for your size until it reaches the 2 stitches that are left before the next front post double crochet. And here we are. So once I reach these 2 stitches, we're going to do another single crochet 2 together. So again, we will go into the first stitch, pull up a loop, and then go into the next stitch, pull up another loop, and then we will yarn over and pull through all 3 loops, decreasing it by another stitch. So that will decrease each of these sections by 2 stitches, bringing those front post double crochets slightly in together. Now that I'm over here, I'm going to yarn over, go through this next front post double crochet, and just work like normal. Skip the one that's behind it, and then work this last single crochet. And then that's what you're going to do every time you encounter this section of your hat, is you're going to perform that decrease between these front post double crochets. Then all you have to do with the cable sections is just work the next row of the cable. So that one, the instructions haven't changed. So you're just going to continue working that in pattern. And then after you're done with this round, you'll be ready to start the next one. So I'm going to go ahead and work the rest of this one off camera, and then I'll talk to you about the next round. I just finished working my decrease round, and I'm ready to start the next round of the crown. And this is going to be fairly easy to do because there's no decreasing on these even numbered rounds. All you're doing is working single crochets around in each stitch. So I'm going to do a single crochet there, single crochet into the front post double crochet. And then when we get here to where our decrease was, if you'll notice the very top has that V because it was just 1 stitch essentially, you're just going to work this stitch under that V just like normal. And there will be 1 stitch there, and then you work into the next one. So the stitch count here should now reflect the decreases from the previous round. So it should have dropped by, it should have dropped by 8 stitches because there are 4 of these sections and there were 2 decreases on each one. So 2 times 4 is 8. So once you work your single crochets all the way around, it's time for us to begin the next decrease round. I just now finished working my single crochets around, and we're ready to begin the next decrease round. So this is where the instructions are going to start splitting out depending on your size, because each one is going to be at a different point in their decrease. So make sure you're paying attention to which ones are for your size. So for most of the sizes, this is going to be where we decrease exactly the same way as we did before. The only one that doesn't do that is going to be the extra small. The extra small is just going to follow a different instruction, which I will be showing how to do later in this video after I do this round. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that out, so you'll still do it the same way. We will work our first single crochet here, followed by a front post double crochet, skipping the one behind it, And then just like the one we did before, we're going to work a single crochet 2 together. So we will go in, pull up a loop, go into the next one, pull up another loop, and then yarn over and pull through all 3 on our hook. But this time we won't have as many stitches in between, but we'll still go ahead and single crochet however many stitches it says to do for our size until we get across to the last 2 stitches before the front post stitch. So then we will do another single crochet 2 together, and then front post double crochet, skipping the one behind it, and then a single crochet. And then I'm to my cable section where I will work the next row of the cable just like normal. So that's going to be exactly the same as the previous decrease round we did. And we can already see, we just kind of set this down, it's gradually bringing these front post double crochets in together until they're going to reach a point. So that's all you're doing on these decrease rounds, is working the front post double crochet, single crochet 2 together, work across, single crochet 2 together, front post double, single crochet, cable, and then repeat that all the way around. Then when you get to the next round, it's just single crochets all the way around, no decreasing. And you'll do that for your size until it reaches the separated out instruction for what you do for the final decrease before you move to the next section. So I'm going to go ahead and work up the rest of this part of the crown for my hat until I get to that point, and then I will return to show you how to do that final decrease before we move to the last crown section. I've just finished working up all of the decreases, and now I'm ready to work this final decrease of the first part of our crown. So what you do here is, rather than starting with a regular single crochet in this first stitch, we're actually going to begin with a single crochet 2 together across the first stitch and the second stitch. So I'm going to go ahead and take my stitch marker out, and into the very first stitch we will insert our hook and pull up a loop. Then into the next stitch, insert, pull up our loop, and then yarn over and pull through all 3. And then that's going to be the new first stitch of our round. So I'll go ahead and put my stitch marker back in there. Then for these next 2 stitches, we're going to work 2 front post double crochets. So we're going to be finally bringing these in together to where they're going to be meeting. So we'll do our first front post double crochet here. And then next front post double crochet across to the next one here. And now I made that a little loose. I don't really like the look of that. There we go. Let's try that again. You can see now it's starting to kind of pinch the top of our hat together here into that little pointed archway. Okay, so now that we've done that, because we have 2 front post double crochets, we're going to skip the next 2 single crochets that were behind them. And then across the next 2, we're going to do another decrease. So in this next one, we'll go ahead and insert our hook, pull up our loop, and then into the last one, insert our hook, pull up our loop, yarn over, pull through all 3. And now we have joined these 4 stitches are the final result of decreasing this entire section. So once I do that, the last thing I do is just continue working the next cable row. So I'm going to go ahead and work that. So it would be the next cable. 1, 2, 3. Okay, there we go. And then I'll just work, like my post stitches as normal, blah, blah, blah. Then once I'm done working that cable, I need to be very careful and make sure that I always do start with a single crochet 2 together. So I'm not starting with just a regular single crochet. Every time I repeat this section here, I'm always starting with a decrease, then the 2 front post double crochets, and then the decrease afterwards. And that's going to bring that into that point. So I'll go ahead and work that up off camera, and then I will meet you back to talk to you about how to do the final set of decreases for the remainder of your crown. After working a final round of single crochets at the end of crown part 1, you're now ready to begin crown part 2. So all the sizes, it's going to be the same, where we're going to work this part these decreases down to the same number. So you should be getting the same stitch counts and everything. So the first thing to do is that the very first way we decrease is actually by skipping this very first stitch of our round. So we're going to skip this first single crochet, and then we're going to be working a front post double crochet two together around these next two post stitches, and that's going to be the first stitch of our new round. So to do a front post double crochet two together, I'm going to yarn over, go around this next stitch, just like we do for our normal front post doubles, pull up our loop, yarn over, and pull through the first two. And then instead of completing that stitch, I will now yarn over, go around the next stitch, the second front post double crochet, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through two. So now I'll have two front post double crochets started that are incomplete, and now I'm ready to join them together at the top by doing a yarn over and pull through all three. Now it might be a little bit loose. If you need to, you can go back and redo them just to get them a little bit tighter. But once you figure out how you want it to look, that's going to be your new first stitch of the round. So we'll go ahead and pop our stitch marker back into that stitch. Then one thing to note is that in the notes of the pattern, it states that when you do your front post double crochet two togethers in this round, you're going to be skipping 2 stitches behind them, because originally there were 2 stitches and we're basically joining them together in one, but we didn't actually join these 2 single crochets. So we're going to go ahead and skip those 2 singles that were behind these original front post double crochets to keep our stitch count correct. Then across these next 2 single crochets, we're going to do a single crochet 2 together. Then across the next 2, we're going to do another single crochet 2 together. And that should bring us to our cable here, where we will have our 4 front post double crochets. So you are now going to work 2 sets of front post double crochet 2 together. So just again, we're going to yarn over, go around that first one, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, then yarn over, go around the next one, pull up our loop, yarn over, pull through 2, and then we will join those 2 incompleted stitches at the top with one final yarn over, pull through. Then we'll do it again into the next 2. So we'll yarn over, find our next 2 post stitches, pull up a loop, do that, yarn over, go into the next one, pull up our loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through all 3, and now we've joined those. Now because of that, we're going to actually skip the 4 stitches that are behind there, because there were 2 here and 2 here. So if we skip the 2 that were behind these 2 originally, plus these 2 here, that's a total of 4. So we will skip 1, 2, 3, 4 stitches, and then we'll be back here where we will do a single crochet 2 together. And then we will be back to another repeat where we will now have these front post double crochets. So then we're able to repeat all of that again, where we will join these front post double crochets with a front post double crochet 2 together. Skipping the 2 single crochets behind them, and then we will single crochet 2 together here, single crochet 2 together on the next one, and then do 2 sets of front post double crochet 2 together, and then skip the 4 behind there, and then do single crochet 2 together. So I'll go through that just so you can see it in action. All right, so I've done those, and now I'm ready to skip the next 4, and then we will single crochet the next 2 together. And there you have it. So what we're then going to do is work those repeats around, And then in the very last stitch, I'm just going to show you right here. The very last stitch here, we're going to just work one single crochet. It's not being joined together. And that's because we skipped the first stitch of the round. So it's almost like we would have done a single crochet two together here at the end, except that there's not another one to work into because we skipped. So don't let that part be confusing. It's just to keep the stitch count the same, because we're essentially just joining every single stitch that's paired together into one stitch. That's all this round is really doing. So if you find that you're a little confused there at the end, just know if you go back and count all your stitches, you should be down to 24 total stitches, because the round before had 48 and we're basically cutting it in half. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and work the rest of that off camera, and then I will join you back up to talk to you about the next the next decrease round. Sorry, I just really felt like I just needed to at least show you, just in case you were still really confused about this part. But I just finished doing my last two front post double crochets two together. And then you'll notice that if you skip the 4 that were behind there, 1, 2, 3, 4, we have this one final stitch right before our beginning of round stitch marker. And so that's what I'm talking about. You're just going to work one single crochet into that. So you're not going to work any more single crochets two together on this round, because we don't have anything else to join it with. So that's what I mean, is that you just work after that last front post double crochet two together. You'll then work just a final single crochet. Then on the next round, you're just going to go around and work single crochets in every stitch. So every other round, we're not doing any decreasing. We're just doing the single crochets around. So you'll just work those 24 stitches, those 24 single crochets around. And then after that, I will show you the next decrease round. Okay, now that we've done that, the remainder of this hat is getting really close to the end, and we're going to be doing a series of single crochets two together and single crochets to get the count down to where we will have a really small amount of stitches that we can then sew up to close at the top. So for this next round, what we're going to do is work a series of 2 single crochets followed by a single crochet two together. So to do that, we're going to take our stitch marker out, and then I will work a single crochet into this first one. Go ahead and mark that again. Then work a single crochet into the next one, so just regular single crochets. Then we will do a single crochet two together across these next two. So pull up our loop, pull up our second loop, and together. And then we just repeat that again. So we will do a single crochet, a single crochet, and then a single crochet two together. 1, 2. And that should drop your stitch count from 24 down to 18 stitches. So I'm going to go ahead and work those. So 1, 2, 2 together. And you'll find that this part starts to go really quickly because you're getting fewer and fewer stitches at the top, so your rounds are not taking as long. Notice that because we've basically brought all of these front post double crochets to a point, we're no longer having to do anything with those. So we're just doing single crochets around, because they basically just end right here at the top. And that's not really the part people are going to be paying attention to. They're going to be looking at all the beautiful cabling on the side and not really concerned about how it looks at the top here. So here we go. All right, I'm almost done. So I've got single, single, and then I should have 2 more left. Yes, I do. So I've got those last 2 before my stitch marker, and I will just do single crochet 2 together. Okay, and that's the end of that round. So then what I need to do is work another round of just single crochets. There's no decreasing on this one. I find that if I try to do decreasing on every single round, the top gets really like loose and the stitches are just like too big and open, and that kind of defeats the purpose of wearing a nice warm crocheted hat if there's giant holes at the top allowing the heat from your head to escape. So that's why every other round we'll still just do a regular single crochet just to keep it from being too open at the top. Okay, so I'll go ahead and work those. Okay, I've made it back around and I'm ready for the next round of decreases. So in this one, instead of doing 2 single crochets before I do my single crochet 2 together, I'm only going to do 1. So I'll go ahead and remove my stitch marker, single crochet into this first one. Go ahead and place my marker back in there. Then I will single crochet 2 together across these next 2. And then just repeat that around. So I will do a single crochet, then single crochet 2 together. Do that again. And that will bring our total down from 18 stitches to 12 stitches. Single, and then single crochet 2 together. Ooh, we are getting close. Okay, so now that we've done our decrease around here, we can see that the hole at the top is closing up really nicely. And so now we're just going to do one more round of single crochets here. Go ahead and take, oh my goodness, there we go. Take that out. Single, place that there. Okay, I'm back around and we're ready to do our final round of decrease, which also happens to be the final round of our hat. So there's no more just regular single crochets. We're just going to join every single one of these together. So we're going to take out our stitch marker here. I'm going to do a single crochet 2 together right from the start. There we go. And then for this, I can usually just count. I don't need to keep using this because it's my last round anyway. So I'm just going to go ahead and set that aside. So there's my first one. So you should have 6 single crochet 2 togethers to do. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, go, and then one final one, 6. There we go. Okay. Once I do that, this hole is going to be very, very tiny, but we're going to go ahead and cinch it together. So to do that, we're going to take our scissors here and we're going to leave ourselves about maybe like a 4 or 5 inch long tail. Okay, there we go. And then go ahead and grab our yarn needle here. And we're just going to pull our strand through, set our hook aside. We don't need it anymore. Okay. So now what we're going to do is thread our yarn through our needle here. And then what I like to do is, this is a technique that I've seen other designers use where it just kind of gives you a nice way of getting a little round cinch in right here, is you find your stitches. And so there should be about 6 of them again. And you find this top one right here and you find this V and you go underneath just the front loop of this V. So you go under that front loop right here. Then you go under the front loop of the next stitch. Okay. And then you go under the front loop. Oh, sorry, I pulled out there. So we got that one. that one, and then the next one. And if you can get all of them at once, that's fine. If not, like for me, I'm just going to go through these first 3 stitches since I know there are 6. Okay, so that'll get me about halfway around. You'll just take it and pull your yarn through. Now don't quite tighten up yet because we're not through all of the stitches yet. And so then I'm going to find the next 3 stitches here. I'm going to find the front loop of this one. So I'll go through there, front loop of this one, and then the front loop of this one. Now, if you find that this is too difficult and you just want to like grab as whatever stitches and just kind of cinch it around, you can as well. I just find that this makes it a little bit more polished. So we're going to go through that one, and that's going to be our final one to go through the front loops. And then we can see it creates this little ring right here that we can then pull tight, and it closes up that hole. Nice right there, okay? And then what you'll want to do is to secure this, you're going to go and find just like whatever stitches kind of around here. You're going to want to go and just weave your yarn in around there. So I'm just going to kind of weave in around the top here. And I'm going in one direction to start. And then after I get a good amount around the top going one direction, I will then find kind of a place where I can wrap the yarn around something. So I might go like, around this strand right here, and maybe this one that's kind of tucked in right there. It's really not, you don't have to be picky about where it goes, but just around something, just kind of loop it around. And then we're basically going to do a little U-turn. And then we're going to go back through the opposite direction that we just came through, because what that'll do is then that will secure the yarn so that no matter which way we're pulling the fabric, so when you put the hat on and it stretches, the yarn is going to be pulling in opposite directions and balancing out and keeping it from coming out of our hat. So then we'll just go through the next ones here, going the opposite direction. And trying to go through strands and not like just like under. So like sometimes like some people, they might accidentally just like go, underneath a bunch of strands, but then we're like it's coming out from underneath the hat. So you want to make sure you're going like into some of these loops that form these stitches so that they're a little bit more secure. Okay, you just kind of do that. And if you just really need to, just for your own peace of mind, you can do that same thing where you loop around, do another U-turn, and then go back in the opposite direction a third time. But I find that that's not really necessary at this point because it's plenty secure in there. Unless you're just really seeking out to unravel this, it's just going to stay. It's fine. So then we pull through that, and then we'll have a bit of excess here. I just, I'd rather have more than not enough. I'll go ahead and just clip that, and then we'll kind of stretch that out, kind of maybe massage it a little bit, not rub, but like kind of just like pinch it between my fingers and just kind of like move it a little bit there. And then we've got our Asclepius beanie. And then what you could do is you could be able to throw on like a pom-pom, like you could use like a Clover pom-pom maker and then be able to use yarn to create it, or you can buy just like a faux fur one or like a fun one that you can attach using whatever attachments they have. But the next step you're going to do is just go through and weave in your yarn ends, and you've got your hat here. Now, because of the cables, these cables kind of try to pinch and cinch things in, and so it's not going to be as soft and stretchy or anything like that. So the next important thing we have to do is to block our hat to measurement. So in the next clip, I'm going to show you how to do that. For blocking, you are going to need a couple of blocking supplies. So one of the things you'll need is one of these foam pads. So you can purchase these online. I'll have a link in the description box for where you can get ones just like the ones I have here. But really any craft store, yarn store, anything like that is going to have some kind of blocking supplies, or you can just find some on Amazon. But then you'll also need knit blockers. So these are going to be these pins that you're going to use to put the, well, basically stick your piece into the foam pad, and they have these sharp little needles on them, and then they just stick in, and you can use that to stretch and place the thing that you're making into place. So what I'm going to do is, the first thing you'll want to do is take your hat, and I went ahead and soaked it with some wool wash just for a bit, got it nice and wet, and then you gently squeeze all the water out of it, without any sort of like twisting or wringing or anything like that, just so you're not distorting any of the stitches. But once it's nice and damp here, there are a couple of things we're going to want to get rid of. So one thing is that with the way we had to decrease, we have this kind of like little cone point thing happening here. So that's going to be something we can get rid of when we do our blocking. The other thing is that it's not going to have the width that we need because these cables are kind of cinching everything in. And we want to open these cables up so you can really see those and get it to be the right size. So for my size, I know that I need the circumference of the hat to be 20 inches around. And since each one of these blocks is 1 inch, I'm going to go ahead and find where it's 10 inches. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And I know that I need to stretch it across to those 10 inches to get me the width that I need of the hat. Now, because as it dries, it's going to want to naturally cinch back in, that's where these knit blockers come in. So we go ahead and take it, and I'm going to line it up here on the side of the hat, and then say like, okay, I need it to be right there. Okay. And then I take the other one, go to the opposite side here, stretch it out to that 10-inch mark. And there we go. And then I'll take another one and kind of grab up here, angle it a bit there, since it's going to be rounding. And then I'll do the same thing over here on this side. There we go. We can already see that it's opening up these stitches. Now I'm not stretching it to the point where it's like distorting everything. It's literally just stretching it and gently putting it into place where I want it to naturally lay when it dries. Then one of the things we'll need to do is go ahead and get our ribbing to be lined up, because it might be a little bit floppy down here on the bottom. I want it to line up to about maybe this bottom line here. So we got that, kind of fit it into place there. And then I will line that bottom up and get through both of those pieces. So then that way it's nice and lined up here at the bottom. I find the next section and do that same thing. So bring the underneath side, so the part that's under here, and the one on top. Be careful not to poke yourself there. And there we go. And then we have one more over here to kind of fit where I want it to go. And you can play around with this, get it to shape however you're wanting to make sure it's shaped. Sometimes if you find, okay, that didn't quite work the way I wanted, you can always take a pin out and then reinsert it where it needs to go. And then I notice over here that my ribbing is kind of starting to come in a bit. That's okay, because this part is going to be a little bit narrower than this part anyway. So it's okay that this is kind of coming in a bit. What I want to make sure with the ribbing is just that it's nice and lined up along the bottom, so we got a good clean edge. Now the final thing to take care of is going to be this part. So I'm actually going to turn this around here so we can see it a little bit more easily. And this, because we want to get rid of that cone, what we're going to do is kind of stretch these bits out to where they're lined up more evenly with the top of that. Grab another one. Just kind of do the same thing where we pull that up. And then notice this one's kind of wanting to poke out. So what I might do is take another one of these and just kind of grab and pull it down here Just kind of flatten that like that. And then just kind of stick my pins right there. And then that will pin that into place. So now you can see that we've gotten rid of that cone. It's nice and flat. And so as it dries, the stitches are going to stay relatively in these same spots whenever it dries. So now that I've done that, I can go ahead and just kind of shift that back to where it was before. And now I can see that my hat is where I want it to be, and it's going to be the size that I want it to be. And now what I can do is leave it to dry. And one thing I like to do to help that along is I go ahead and grab kind of like a box fan that I've got here. I go ahead and turn that on high and then just kind of point it across here so it'll move the air around, and then just leave this for several hours. I usually try to leave it like overnight because it usually takes wool a while, especially if it's a thick hat like this, to be able to dry. And then once it's dry, you just remove all of the pins, pull your hat off, kind of shake it out to fluff it a bit, and it should be ready to wear. I hope you really found this tutorial video helpful. If you did, please like and subscribe so that we can keep up on future projects and tutorial videos for new patterns. Thank you and have a wonderful day.